You are now listening to the I Think I Love My Wife podcast. And this is your best friend's best friend, Chidozie Okafor, ready to take you on another journey. Are you with me? Because I'm ready. Let's get it. This episode is sponsored by Nello Effect, a coaching and consulting service that helps people turn mindfulness into action as they navigate the dating world as well as their relationships. Follow on Instagram at nello.effect and find more information in the episode description. Welcome to another episode of I Think I Love My Wife. I'm excited to have Aubrey here with me. It's been a minute. We've been trying to get this done for a while, so I'm happy that you're here.
I'm excited to be here.
We're just going to go ahead and get started with it. As you guys may know, we're going to do a few different demographic questions to get you to know Aubrey a little bit better, and then we'll dive into his story.
Let's do it.
How are you feeling today?
Feeling good.
Cool. So before every episode, I love to do a toast just because that's what we do. And I want to celebrate life. People are going to think I bit this off of, Club Shay Shay because he does it. But if you go back and look when the podcast came out in 2018, 2017, I was doing it before that.
So no Laportier.
So I don't have my own spirit, but I was toasting before him. So I don't want anybody to say that I bit. But in the spirit of evolution and growth and fatherhood, I just want to do a toast to, continue to propel in that direction and evolve as men. So cheers to you, man.
Cheers to that.
So let's get started. How long have you known your wife?
Wow. We met in 2010. So that's 14 years. It'll be 14 years in June.
That's a whole teenager.
I never thought of it that way.
And so tell me about the process where you guys meet, talking, dating. How'd that go?
So it went really quickly, actually. We met in a pre-law program. It's called the Council of Legal Education Opportunity. They have a fellowship program for law school students getting ready to matriculate and to help prepare them for all the things that happen in law school. So it was in Miami, Florida. Mm-hmm. So we both were, I had just graduated undergraduate. Liz was just graduating as well. So, both of us, she was coming from Texas, I was coming from Alabama. And both of us are thinking, we're going to have a summer in Miami, South Beach.
Living your best life.
Live my best life. Okay. We were both out of relationships and it was like, live it up and study law as nerds too. And so we got down to the program. First day, we were preparing for our first day of the program and we lived in the dorm. So we met at the elevator and Liz looked at me. We kind of just bumped into each other and we introduced ourselves. And after I introduced herself, her response was, "Oh, your name's Aubrey. I think I want to name my son that." And from there, it was definitely a unique introduction. But from there, we just kind of rolled with it. And next thing you know, by the end of the summer, we were dating and never really looked back from there.
And when you say dating, like exclusive dating or just started?
We were exclusive by the end of the summer.
All right. I know I have demographic questions I want to get into, but you're telling me, just for context, you're just finishing undergrad. So 22.
Yeah, I think I was 21 at the time.
21, 22, you finish undergrad and you meet someone and, you have the whole world ahead of you in terms of single life. And then you lock yourself down.
Lock myself down.
All right. We're going to touch on that. So you guys meet, and this is 2010, correct?
2010.
Start dating. How long did you guys date until you proposed?
Oh, you're going to hit me with the math there. I
gotta go back a bit.
I have to do the math on it. I proposed in 2015, December 2015.
Gotcha. And so in that evolution of meeting to proposing, when you said we were dating by the end of that summer, was it like talking or this is exclusively my girlfriend?
We were exclusive. She was exclusively my girlfriend at the end of that summer.
Gotcha. So 2015 comes, by this time you're 26, right? How long was the engagement?
Depends on when you count which wedding date. So we had a traditional Nigerian wedding. That was about 10 months from engagement.
That sounds about right.
And then, we had our traditional American white wedding. I don't mean to quotationize it. Yeah. It always sounds a little funny to American.
It's like the American wedding. Yeah, I get you.
When we had the American white wedding, it was in January. So about a little over a year.
Got it. Okay. And so that means, I'm trying to do my math now. You guys have been married for 10 years almost.
This is our seventh year.
Okay, 7 years. Okay, cool. So what do you do for a living?
I'm an attorney.
Okay.
For a large tech company.
And your wife?
She's also an attorney for a sports apparel and a sports event company.
Got it. So one of the things I think is helpful to understand is like family dynamic. When you think about your life growing up, and even to this day, what's like the family structure in terms of, are your parents still together? Are they divorced? What does that look like for you?
My parents are still together. Been married for, I don't know, over 30 plus years.
That's beautiful. And then what about your wife's parents?
Same.
So both of y'all grew up seeing marriage throughout your lives.
Definitely.
Got it. And then sibling wise, where do you guys fall? Each of you guys fall in that?
I'm the oldest. She's the youngest.
But how many siblings do you have?
I have one little brother, and she has 2 older sisters.
Gotcha. So you're the oldest, and she's the youngest.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're gonna talk about how that impacts your relationship. And then the last thing I just want to know about just children was, I know we're gonna talk about later, but for the audience, do you guys have children?
We do. We have two kids, a boy and a girl, twins.
Oh, beautiful.
That are 19 months.
Oh, nice. Terrible twos coming.
They're looming.
So let's just go into the meaty questions. Like, what do you love about your wife?
How much time you got?
I mean, we got a little bit of time.
Got a little bit of time. When you meet her, as big of a personality as I have, she definitely lights the room. She makes everyone, has this ability to make everybody feel warm and wanted and seen and heard when she enters a room. She's energetic personality. She's really fun, but she's also very caring, and she spends a lot of her time trying to think about how to make other people feel comfortable around her, and how she can use her talents to help enrich others. And it's inspiring to be around someone that's like that.
So, what makes her special to you?
I think that's part of it. That's how she caught me, is her ability to connect with people and just to make them feel comfortable. And I get to live that every day. It was something that was, I don't want to say unique, but her way of doing it was super unique. And I still think that to this day. And it shows up at just different times in our marriage, and it helps us get through good times. It helps us navigate rocky waters. And I think that's one of the things that holds us together really well.
Gotcha. And so, as you know, the title of the podcast is I Think I Love My Wife. And most people think it's a question. I get that reaction. But my belief is that men generally will feel the feelings before they're willing to acknowledge them. And there's usually a set of experiences or a situation that occurs that validates how they feel, where they're saying, you know what, I think I love this woman. And so when was the moment or the set of experiences that you were like, you know what, I think I love this woman?
I'll buy into that premise, but I'll take it a different direction, actually. I think for me, it was a series of events of just getting to know her, having her be around me, supporting me, for us having a shared vision of building a life together. So, I mean, there are tons of micro incidents. I would say, I'll answer your question more directly. During that summer, we were having to go to some event, and we had to get dressed up. So she finished probably the first and only time she's ever beaten me getting dressed in our relationship. She was finished getting dressed, and I was picking out a tie. And she walked into our closet, and I'm not the most fashionable guy. And
you look nice today, like the kicks.
I appreciate it. She actually picked this out. So
there you go.
I mean, mine's the kicks. I picked out the kicks this morning. But I was looking in my closet for a tie, and she just walked in, and she just looked at me, looked at the tie, grabbed it, and said, "Choose this one," and just walked out. I think it was at that moment. She did it in an adorable way, but it was also, she wanted me to look nice. And she's like, this is what I think will help you present, Wes. And it was just something in that moment. I was like, this girl may be special.
Kind of cool. When you, by 2010 or 2015, right, when you proposed, what stage of your life were you in terms of thinking about marriage? Was it a situation where, hey, we've been in this for 5 years, shit to get off the can? Or were you already in the season of, I'm looking for marriage? What season were you, or stage of life were you when you decided to propose? So
for context, when we met, we met pre-law school. So I took a gap year before I went to law school. She went straight after the program. So roll around in 2015, I had just graduated. I graduated in 2014. I was just getting settled into my career. I just passed the bar exam. So all these things were happening within this period, and I was trying to get established. I I've never made a lot of money or any money at this time. So
You've been a professional student.
I've been a professional student pretty much. So my whole existence at that time was, even before I could start thinking about bringing in a wife and all the things that come down the road with that, house, kids, all those things, I need to find a way to be stable myself.
Yeah.
So that's where I was. And so when we rolled around to 2015, it was less of and definitely in 2014, at that point, is less of who's going to be that person. I was pretty committed to Liz. It was well, no pretty, and I was committed to Liz, but it was more of like, how can I prepare myself to be the best husband that I can be before I take on the responsibility of building a family.
Yeah. And I like that you say that, because I think implicitly we know there's an awareness of responsibility. However, when I hear people, and I'll say women generally, talk about, or in situations where like, what's taking so long, I don't know if there's a realization of the gravity and degree of responsibility that men feel. Mm-hmm. And so I'm envisioning you, if I'm tracking right, you're 2014, 2015, wrapping up law school. Mm-hmm. You're about to start your career. Mm-hmm. Counter to a lot of the way other people, or generally people move, you were still trying to figure out life, but you had the person identified, which
Correct.
is kind of inverted a bit for a lot of people. And so there was a lot of unknowns for how life would look for you. Mm-hmm. But you knew you had this person, and then you chose still to not... what most people do is say, hey, let me figure out life and then we can, move forward. You chose to move forward while you were figuring out that life. Talk to me about what were the things that you were navigating in general during that time, but also to make the decision to move forward with that responsibility as well.
It was a balance. To your point, I like the way that you phrased that. It was definitely a balance, because the thing that I haven't mentioned, we were long distance this entire time too.
Bro, I did not know that.
We were the first time I lived in the same city outside of the summer we spent in Miami is when I think we had been engaged for 6 or 7 months. When was the first time?
Oh, we got a whole set of... So you guys never lived with each other or spent like a substantial amount of time with each other until after you proposed?
I interned in Houston for a summer in between my second and third year of law school.
So you had a summer.
So we had a summer.
But you guys weren't living together during that time either. Kind of. Not officially.
Yeah, not officially. Okay. Just in case our parents are watching this video.
Okay, got it. So we'll talk about that. Okay, so walk me through, let me stay on track. Walk me through what you're navigating in that. So you're not only navigating and trying to figure out life as an adult. You're also in a period or season where you're about to start living in proximity for the first time in your relationship. Like, what's going through to me, that sounds very daunting.
For us, I guess we a lot of people, like you said, don't, or I don't want to say a lot of people, there are a lot of long distance relationships, but it's untraditional to be that distant for that long. Yeah. So when we got engaged, there still wasn't a plan. I mean, we knew that we needed to live in the same place, but we still didn't have an active plan of how we were doing. I was living in Seattle, Washington at the time, and she was living in Houston. So it was definitely how do we combine lives? What's the best place for us to live? Who's going to give up who's going to give up their career to relocate? Or it was a lot of those things as we were also figuring out, like you said, wedding logistics and postgraduate life, and it was definitely an interesting time.
Yeah, I'm struggling to decide what direction I want to go, so I'll let you decide. Because part of me wants to understand, how was it navigating long distance? Mm-hmm. And then the other part of me wants to have you walk through what do those conversations look like when you are having to make trade-offs of whose career is going to, take a bigger adjustment, who's going to relocate. And it's easy to, on the back end, say, hey, we had a conversation, we figured it out, but I'd love to know deeper, how did those conversations go? Where would you like to go?
I'll see if I can tackle both.
Okay.
I'll be ambitious. So how we balanced it, so we traveled a lot. We spent a lot of money on Southwest Airlines and eventually Alaska Airlines, so I was living in Seattle, I worked for an airline. So
that helped.
That definitely helped. Okay. That definitely helped.
Funny stories, and I'm cutting you off.
Oh, come on.
The other person that I interviewed, I think it was season 1, Anthony, was also long distance before he proposed. They're older, but I think he had a situation where Southwest hooked them up in terms of the flights were really, really cheap to make it work. And so it's interesting that it's sample size of 2, but for those scenarios that the cost, which is probably a big inhibitor for people, wasn't as big of a barrier to make it work.
We were broke law school students, so I won't say that much. But to your point, it's the intentionality of budgeting. It was, people I had classmates that would go to the bars or that would do stuff locally. Want to get away fare if you at the time, if you booked 6 weeks, 2 months out in advance, you can do a round trip ticket, $300, which, it's no small amount of change. But, if you're intentional about saving, we weren't spending on rooms because we were traveling to see each other. We weren't spending on transportation, and we were already eating anyway. So it was just an intentionality, and that came with sacrifices. So I look back at some of my other friends who were single or who were working earlier in their careers versus going to grad school. They traveled a lot more. We didn't get a chance to go do boys trips or girls trips as much as we probably would like to, or I'm a big sports fan. I didn't probably go to some of I went to Alabama, so we didn't go to some of the national championship.
I forgive you for that.
You know what? I can't even say anything. Me from Michigan right now.
Go blue.
Boo, boo.
No, I mean, I hear you talking, and what comes to you have to love this woman or deeply care about her, because I'm envisioning myself, and I'm not saying I am the norm, but at 23, so you guys are in it, and being willing not to just live, so to speak. Plus, on top of that, the challenges, right? I think the word you said was sacrifice that you have to make to keep a relationship like relationships are hard, right? So to keep a relationship like that going and sustaining, I think sacrifice is probably doesn't even relay the degree of challenge it was. And most people, we see it fizzles out, it doesn't work, it's too hard. And so what I get out of that there was either a deep intentionality, there was a lot of commitment and willingness to make it work, because there was, don't let me put words in your mouth, you correct me if I'm wrong, that you guys saw enough to feel confident to endure.
I think for long distance relationships, I think one thing it does is it removes the physical nature out of it. And what I mean by physical, I don't mean sexual. I just mean is when you're in close proximity to someone, you get to have the rom-com kind of moments. You get to go on the nice dates. You get to be around friends. You get to do events. You get to watch movies together, all the cutesy stuff. And sometimes that prevents you from actually having conversations. And it doesn't have to be deep conversations of, where do you align politically or, religiously, or how do you want to raise kids? But it could just be simple things of just finding mutual topics that you'd enjoy to discuss. So when you're when you're in a long distance relationship like we communicated every night at the time it was Skype. FaceTime wasn't even invented yet. So we spent a lot of time on Skype just talking, and it wasn't mushy stuff. It was let me just say this YouTube video, or let me tell you what happened in my day, or let me tell you about this thing, this new TV show that I like, or this thing that I saw on television, or current event that's bugging me. And from there, we just built a really close friendship. And I think that anchor is what endeared us both then, and I think that's still an anchor that we use today, where it helps navigate through our marriage. It's not based on this the super. I don't want to call it the superficial, but more of I guess I will call it the superficial things of love is rooted more on a friendship, and then all those things are layered on top of it.
I see that. There's definitely pros and cons to everything. And so to your point, I can envision sustaining a long distance relationship. The conversation level requires intentionality, or it will get dry really quickly, or you have to really connect. And I low key envision, Love is Blind without the pods. Like, you guys are just connecting.
Kind of was like that. It felt,
you've seen the person, so you're not like, I don't know how they're going to look at engagement, but you are connecting on that level.
That's a good point. I think about it that way.
And I also get the point on the flip side. Sometimes in dating in person, the convenience of it releases you of the requirement to go deep, because we just watched the movie, but we really didn't talk, right? Or we just went to dinner, and we didn't talk on the same level as a conversation. But like Love is Blind, you got to be in front of somebody. And then you see their quirks, right? You see how you may deal with challenges looks different when, I'm only going to see you for 4 days. Do I really want to beef about this, or do I want to enjoy the 4 days that I have? Versus when you're here, you're more likely to engage on those things. And so I'm like in awe a little bit because I could never. I was like, I don't. Maybe I just didn't meet the person too.
I think that's more of what it is. I think when you meet the person, it just goes.
See, I would have been that guy that would have messed up a full house. Just because people always say, like, you know, not actually this later, but people say men mature later than women, and maybe there's some science behind that, but they use it in the context of a relationship. And people that listen to this know what my stance is. I think, you know, people mature differently. And my equation, or my, I guess, metaphor, so to speak, for men and dating is like, it's just not prioritized for them early as it is for women. And I would always say that it's like poker, you know. Some guys be playing poker all their lives and still terrible. Some guys come in and they just have a knack for it. They know what's a good hand and know when to take it home. I would say that's you. And then some guys, as they play, they've gotten better at it. I was the guy that, as I played, I've gotten better because I would have saw, you know, a flush set up and try to do something else and messed it up, right? And I think that's how people grow and learn. And so, yeah, I think I could have had the right person to still messed it up because I put myself in that middle bucket of, as I played, I realized how valuable a good hand looked like to then say, okay, when I get one, I know how to play it because I fumbled it. Not fumbled, I won't say fumbled it. You just didn't appreciate certain things. So it could have been a person that could have worked out, but you just wasn't prioritizing at the time.
This episode is sponsored by Nello Effect, a coaching and consulting service that helps people turn mindfulness into action as they navigate the dating world as well as their relationships. Follow on Instagram at nello.effect and find more information in the episode description.
Let me ask you a question. Yeah, I know you got your MBA. I know you went to grad school. I know you've done other things in the past, but how were you postgraduate? Like in the same time? No, you were living. Okay.
I mean, so I just never. I don't know if I just thought about relationships differently. I just never really wanted to be handcuffed, and not like. And I'm in a relationship, I don't feel handcuffed, right? But what I saw was, okay, especially in like college, okay, hey, we're dating, now we got to go do all these things together. Now I got to wait for you for the button. It's just these routines began to develop that were correlation of meaning for people, which was just routine. And the people get into these habits of doing things, and I think the growth of developing as a unit kind of plateaus. And I was like Greek. We were busy doing a lot of different things, and so that just wasn't something I wanted to deal with the responsibility that I say men have of the feelings.
That's fair.
So if I know, like, I want to move this way and you want something else, I was very upfront about how I was moving, or at least what I wasn't going to do. Now, if you chose to stay around, I was like, proceed at your own risk.
Fair enough.
And then going out, you know, graduating from undergrad. I mean, I was in Houston. And I was a consultant, so I would literally travel Monday, come back Thursday night, and me and my friends might go out Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I would get ready for work Sunday, travel Monday, come back. It was like rinse and repeat. And we didn't have a lot of money, but we would go to the places that were free before.
You knew how to make it stretch.
Yeah, we was out. But part of my challenge was that I knew I was going to go to grad school. So while I was doing this very, I would say, challenging job that wasn't like a typical job people were accustomed to, I had the dynamic that I was flying every week. And so my time was limited when I came back. And that was hard for people to feel scheduled.
Right.
And then I was studying for the GMAT. So my time I was very much focused on what I wanted to achieve. And I needed someone that was going to allow me the space to proceed towards those things and fit in that. And then whenever someone was pulling me away from that, I was like, I just can't be pulled away. And so that was kind of my
I respect that
challenge.
I heard a little bit differently than what you said. You said that you were kind of just out there.
I was.
But what you also just said is you didn't find someone that, or when you would find someone, you found, or if I heard you correctly, it sounds like they would oftentimes pull you away from your goals, not anchoring you in it. So that just only reaffirmed you just continuing to anchor what you did. I lived a similar disciplined life. I think that was probably one of the things we had in common. We just approached it differently. I I was laser focused about being a lawyer, probably since I got to law undergraduate. And at the time, I was really exploring this. Could I be involved in politics one day? I got bit deeply by the political bug pre President Obama's campaigning, and so I was super focused on driving social change and how can I get this law degree and graduate and change the world.
Those young, motivated. Aspirational. I feel you. I feel like I had that season of my life. And reality slaps you.
Yeah, the reality of the geopolitics of the world slaps you.
Yeah.
So when I met my wife, she fit within that really neatly. So it was easy to maintain the discipline life. Being a law school student, probably like being an MBA student, you have to be very disciplined. It's especially your first couple of years where you wake up, go to class, you have, multiple hours of reading and brief prepping and then writing and studying. So where I found someone who was going through a similar journey, who was also, we shared a lot of the same interests, it felt natural for us to get closer, and I think that helped.
I can imagine. She's grinding, you're grinding. So one of the things that I tell people, and I think it was a challenge for me, when people are not busy, and I don't mean busy like when people don't have things that they're working towards, they tend to want more in those when they're in a relationship. Like that's like, I'm not saying you're filling a void, but when you have when you're trying to engage in dating and all that, and you have like free time, you tend to want more. And when you can't get it, it becomes like an issue, at least in my experience, right? But when someone's grinding and the other person is busy, it may not be a grind. They just have things that they love to do that takes time. Then it's easier to say, hey, these are the pockets we have. How do we make them work?
I would argue that's a misalignment issue.
Potentially.
Because I think, people could be in different places. Someone may have more free time, someone may not have enough. But I think the ultimate thing is, how are you prioritizing that person through all of your stuff? Are you making enough time to prioritize that person's needs? It may not be perfect. And so to your point, I agree. Like someone may feel like have more free time and someone else is grinding. But I also put it back on the person that's grinding. Is that person important enough for you to take? You're going to have free time. You're going to have downtime. Are you prioritizing enough of that time to balance with your partner to make them feel, is 60% enough for your partner to feel whole? Is it 70%? Is it 80%?
It's funny you said to me it's a combination of it, because in my situation I only had 3 days, 2.5 days, 3 days, or 2 full days, right?
Right.
And then I'm taking care of things I need to take care of that I couldn't take care of while I was gone. And so physically I just didn't have time. I was working crazy hours, so there's also not that time. And so even if I gave them the windows that I had, I remember one girl said, I don't want to be fit on a schedule. And I get it. Like, you don't want that. So it's not going to work. Or you can proceed to the degree that I'm going to allow you to proceed. But there's a ceiling to how this is going to evolve.
Exactly.
Basically. But I think that in that, there's also scenarios where people are used to a certain level. Someone is giving effort, and because they're not communicating, it feels like misalignment. And the example I have is, I remember with my partner now, she was probably used to spending more time with people she dated. And I changed my philosophy of dating a bit. Just to be very much upfront about what I needed, what I wanted, and how I was going to move. And it was kind of like sign up for it or not. And I remember a scenario where I think because she was used to more time, she wasn't getting. And I felt like I was feeling the habits starting to form. And I was like, I don't know where I feel yet. So I don't want the habits to start, because people associate those, you're doing these, we're doing this. So it means something. And so I was very mindful of that. And so I remember she was telling me something to the degree of, basically she wasn't getting enough time. And I had to tell her, like, you are probably used to a certain level of engagement. And I am used to a certain level of engagement. And I am trying hard to give you more, but that might not reach what you're used to. But you have to acknowledge what I'm trying. And I gave her the example of my baby brother. And I think this is where it hit for her. I told her, my baby brother like charged me up one summer, because he feels like he calls everybody. He's the person that calls. And I told him, like, your clock is different than mine. You may need to talk or make sure that you have that engagement every week. The way I'm wired, I may not need that for every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks.
Right.
So whenever you call, my clock
we talked, we engaged. My clock starts over.
Right.
And so I don't feel the need yet. Like, I haven't talked to my brother in a minute. Let me call him. Mm-hmm. And I had to tell him, like, you might have to wait so that I can get the feeling to then call you. But if you're doing it at your whim, then that's what you have to do to get me to engage. And I think sometimes people don't want to do what they need to do.
I respect that.
You know, in terms of, because we get in egos, like, I don't want to be calling you. It's like, you want to talk. It's not that, like, I rush you off the phone when we talk. Mm-hmm. I just didn't get the, oh, man, I haven't talked to this person. Let me call them, right? And I had to communicate. Like, I talk to you more than I talk to my partner. I talk to you more than I talk to my mother and my family. You may talk to your family every day. Right. I am talking to you, like, 2 or 3 times a week. That, for me, was a lot because I may talk to my family once a week or every other week. Mm-hmm. So you may not get what you need, but I think if you're not acknowledging the work that someone else is doing to meet you halfway, it could be, I think, disheartening a bit to get to a point where you guys understand or appreciate what the other is giving, so to speak.
I like that. I think it goes back to being aligned with the person. Yeah. You mentioned the self-realization. You said Chidozie today was not, and the way you perceive that is not Chidozie in the past. How did you come to that self-realization? Was it through self-reflection, or was it through therapy?
We was outside.
You know, or being outside, you know?
I mean, I think I always
streets teach lessons too.
The streets teach you lessons. People don't always learn, but they teach you. I wasn't outside like that. I'm joking, but to a degree. But I think like what I mentioned in undergrad. I think I always carried or realized like the responsibility of people's feelings, and so I didn't want to be, to the degree that I could help it, the person that like affects someone that way and then be affected that way. And so if I wasn't ready to like handle them, I didn't want to be responsible for them. Mm-hmm. And so I try to make it clear. I think the biggest difference is the articulation of that. Fair. I think my actions, I think sometimes my either my words said it, but my actions may not have showed like, hey, I'm only here. I might have been doing something so someone read more into my actions, or my I didn't communicate that, and vice versa, right? And I just realized over time that as men, we have to be responsible for both. You can't say, well, I just told you I don't want this to be nothing, and then you're doing all these things, right? Mm-hmm. And so it was a hard transition for me to realize, because like we're all selfish, right? So I'm like, I want to proceed with you and get to know you and have fun and engage in the ways that people engage when they're dating. What happens with a lot of guys where they lie because they want to keep the engagement going, right? Mm-hmm. And so I would tell them that I might be doing these things, right? And I feel like, well, that's how I show love. I may not have the emotional connection, but that's how I show love. Mm-hmm. And I had to realize that my actions needed to match my words, because people are reading not only what you're saying, but what you're doing. That's real. And I think as I realized that there's a responsibility, I can't just say, well, I told her we're not serious, but we do this, we hang out in this manner. That there was a responsibility in men to do that. I think that realization made me realize that I had to make sure that if I wasn't at the point of feelings yet, I can't give you that time, and you know how, you may know how it goes, because you got out the game early. Once people start leaving stuff, you start hanging out, they stay the night, right. They start leaving stuff. Next thing you know, but maybe by the time you realize that person only has a drawer. Right. You can't go back and say, well, I need you to take your clothes out the drawer because I'm not where you're at. Mm-hmm. The woman generally is going to see that, and, that means this is not going where she wants it to go. So she'll withdraw or whatnot. And so I feel like I was always trying to manage that. Like, how are we moving versus her expectations? And I just realized, like, you can't stay tonight. Or you need to take this with you. Or no, you can't take this clothes home with you, because all those things have meaning behind them. And I think as I realized that through my journey of dating, I just got to the point where I wanted to make sure that my actions aligned with my words, and I wasn't willing to do things that I didn't want to do. And I think that's what happens. People do a whole bunch of stuff they don't want to do because they're trying to progress the relationship.
How much are your feelings based on cultural? Because I know for me, I grew up in the Deep South. I grew up, very, traditional kind of like cultural norms that by today's standards probably all wouldn't be fully accepted in our society. So how much of like your shaping was shaped by cultural?
100%.
Okay.
Well, I mean, that 100% is the easy answer. Culture, then you ask yourself, what culture, right? Right. I think foundationally is very much traditional Nigerian culture. Mm-hmm. However, I feel like as I've got older and more immersed in Western culture, that started to sway. And you see things like, oh, this is cool. I like how this goes, and you adapt. I remember I told a girl, like, I'm a modern traditionalist. You know,
I like that.
She didn't like that though. I think she wanted a real traditional.
You need to copyright that.
I thought I was doing something. She's like, if you're traditional, just say you're traditional. I'm like, nah. Like, my dad expected my mom to cook. My dad made sure my mom had gas in her car. Like, my mom, unless she was out during the weekend, she didn't, like, beginning of the week, there was gas in the car. Like, very traditional. And not to say my dad didn't cook and all that. He just begrudgingly did it, so to speak, because it just needed to happen in a relationship. But if all things being equal, my mom's cooking. My mom can come back from work, and my dad let's say he didn't work. She's gonna make sure that that's a labor of love for her. Mm-hmm. Like, I could be home all day visiting, and she works. She'd be like, "What do you need to eat?" That's how she shows love. So that's how I learned love. So some of it's traditional, but when you grow up in a traditional space, how you were loved impacts how you see love, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm a acts of service guy because of that. But I realized, like, I can cook. I wouldn't necessarily expect in situations that made sense, right? That my wife needs to go do it, if she had a rough day, regardless, right? Or, if I have capacity. Mm-hmm. And so I'm traditional in terms of what the default is, but then you kind of modulate based off of that. And I just saw relationships in that context.
I would agree with that. I think for me too. So I would argue one thing I've learned: West African, Nigerian culture is very similar to Black African American culture. I don't think I realized how much the cultures were very similar at their core until I became part of a Nigerian family. And I grew up with a similar mindset. Going to college, I know I was very intentional, and I kind of cringe at this now, saying, I wanted to provide a space, I wanted to marry another professional. I wanted to marry someone as an equal, but I want to give you the option to work. You can work if you want. You can if you want. I'm taking on the pressure, saying I will take on the pressure of being financially stable, so you have the option to work. Because that's the culture I grew up. That's where I saw successful marriages and relationships providing that option. I grew up in a household. My mom's a phenomenal cook. So, that was an expectation that I wanted, coming into life, more of the domestic duties around the house. Like you said, I'm an acts of service guy, so I'm a naturally hands-on guy, but that was something I was hoping that a spouse would take on. And this is, pre-21. Yeah. Aubrey, and, you get older.
Before life hits you.
And life hits you.
The realities of life hits you, yeah.
But it's interesting because I love your term modern traditionalist, because I don't think you and I are singular in that. I think you're starting to see the statistics I remember there's a frequent statistic that I see that back in the 80s, I think there was like a very low percentage of men who have ever changed a baby's diaper.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Now most fathers have changed diapers. Yeah. More fathers are more involved in domestic duties in the household. And they're saying how that's improved life expectancy for women, and how it's reduced and eliminated, because, mental health is still around, but it's helped ease the transition of parenthood for mothers, and has balanced the load a little bit more. So is to your point, it's interesting seeing that evolution, thinking like, man, things I was saying back then, which were probably more socially acceptable at the time. If you think about it, even then it may have been a little cringy, but now it's like, whoa, that's not how things are. And so to your point about that evolution of who you are, I've gone through a similar evolution, even though I've been with the same person. Yeah. Even my mindset of how relationships and how I show up and how to make this thing works has evolved over the years.
Oh, for sure. And I believe, relationships are tough because you're taking two flawed individuals, you're trying to become one, and there's a scripture that talks about how God prunes people, right? Mm-hmm. And pruning, if you ever imagine yourself being a plant getting pruned, that hurts. That shit hurts. And when you are in that process of becoming one, you may not be pruned, but like you're grinding where the edges don't fit, and there's a lot of discomfort in that. As people try to avoid change. And so I'm curious to understand, I guess, starting off, how similar were you and Liz around expectations for the household and those like traditional kind of views and things like this? Given that she's a lawyer, she's working, you guys are both in the same profession, so it makes almost, there's a spectrum for law. So I know that, but apples to apples to a degree versus if you do totally different things. Mm-hmm.
I think we were always pretty aligned. I would say, 80, 90%. We're aligned on those. I think to your point is just in actuality and in the application, how does it work? Like for now, I'll fast forward now. I work nights a lot because one, just the nature of the company I work with, but two, I also manage a lot of engagements in the Asia Pacific, which so they don't wake up till about 6 o'clock at our time. So and also do things in Africa. So I'm usually up really early in the morning and working really late at night. So a lot of times I take on sometimes I may take on more of the night duties with the kids just because I'm already up. With cooking, sometimes we split because I may not get home in enough time because I still go into the office. She goes into the office. So it just depends on, is either starve or, we both starve or does someone pick it up, same with laundry so I think we walked into it thinking one thing, again, based on those kind of societal norms and just what we believe the traditional household looked. And I think it's become blended almost because of reality.
I think children force that to a degree because it's like all hands on deck.
Right.
We just have to get through the day.
Otherwise you drown.
Yeah. But prior to kids, if you go back to 2015, you guys I guess, if I'm hearing you correctly, we're aligned on, hey, here's what's going to happen, or here's how we're going to operate. How do those conversations go? What did it look like prior to reality? And where did you guys agree and where did you guys disagree and have to try to, I guess, find compromise?
I think more the compromise is more of like, where do we want to live?
Good.
I don't think we disagreed about how the household would move.
So she was down to cook.
She wasn't against it.
That's different. Different from.
I think it was just one of those things. Like, she was like, yeah, that's fine. I don't think we ever had like a big discussion about it because I don't think it was an issue.
But ownership is really important to me, and I think you can't have like this kind of laissez-faire attitude, like it'll get done and you just hope that it works out. Someone has to own a thing. Like, for example, you own finances. It doesn't mean that someone doesn't help or they have an aspect of it they do, but at the end of the day, it's your responsibility that it gets done. Mm-hmm. Same thing with cooking. It doesn't mean that whoever owns it does all of it. But at the end of the day, the plan has to be, you're responsible for the plan. You, like, for example, let's say Liz owned cooking. Mm-hmm. If it was me, I would expect that, hey, you're thinking about what we're going to eat for the week. You've realized, hey, your week, these days may not work for you. All right, but I'm going to need you to help out this day. It's communicated, right? Mm-hmm. You don't just show up that day and it doesn't happen, right?
Right.
Laundry, right? Hey, the clothes are not just piling, and then you really need something and it's there, right? So did you think about it that way when you guys talked about, who's doing what or who owns what?
I think a lot of things got complicated because of just random life circumstances. So for example, when we first got engaged and then got married, I worked at a law firm at the time where they gave us dinner. So so that kind of
avoids it.
So it kind of had to be laissez-faire because most of the time I ate at work or like you said. So there are certain things that kind of got nailed down. Like I typically handle most of the finances. I take care of most of the house, like the outside stuff and the car. She takes care of more of the interior things, and that also kind of aligned with just interest in. So I agree. I think it. But I also think dynamics shift too. Mm-hmm. So I think to your point, like there may be times where things may be going on. So in order to make sure we have clean clothes, she takes on more of the laundry duty or because of hours, I'm already up because I'm dealing with things across Africa or Asia. So it makes more sense that I take over more diaper changes in the middle of the night. So that way she can get a couple extra hours of sleep. So I think you're right. You shouldn't approach it. For me, my comfort level, I don't think it's good to approach it as a laissez-faire. But I think also the dynamics of weeks and months and lives and roles and stuff, I think roles are going to be constantly evolving and changing.
No, for sure. That makes sense. Was there an area that you guys where you guys didn't align and you had to have the tough conversation about who's going to own what, or maybe the way you saw it wasn't aligned to how she saw it?
I think it's been a little lot more macro. I think it's like about location of where to live, when to relocate. And it's an ongoing discussion we have of, we're both, rising in our careers. We're both ambitious. We both have, and her company's based here. My company's based on the West Coast. So it's the conversation of, at what point do we relocate? For if an opportunity comes at where do we want to see ourselves living? What cities make sense for us? For cost of living or proximity to family or advancement in career. I think that conversation was probably one of the bigger ones. I think the discussion of when was the appropriate time to start trying for children was one of our bigger discussions, and how many children do we want? I think more of that than day-to-day life, household things were more key in our house.
Oh, that makes sense. I want to understand how you guys navigated that, as well as the adjustment process that I assume you guys went through as you guys lived together. But we run out of time. I want to bring you back so that we can talk about those things if you're good for it.
I'd love to.
All right, cool. Well, if you want to hear more about Aubrey's story, how he navigated long distance relationships, how they thought about who was going to leave their job, relocate, and things of that nature, make sure you follow us and subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you check out the next episode where we'll talk about that more in depth. Follow us at Think Love Wife on Instagram and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Until next time, I hope the conversation keeps going.